Just over a month ago, I had a major issue to sort out, removing this chimney before the winter closes in. In today's video, I'm going to explain why I had to remove it and the problems I encountered doing a job like this entirely single-handed. Now, chimneys and old properties like mine can be quite sophisticated structures, as you can see from this amazing visual here, link in the description below. But what I've done today is created this little mock-up of my cottage to explain to you why I had to remove this chimney. Right, two things can be taken away from this. When I bought this cottage, the chimney in the bathroom was already gone. And I know that because when I excavated the floor, we had the old hearth, as you can see here, and also the flue down into the TV room below. The chimney in the kitchen had at some stage also been removed. And I know that because when I pulled the ceiling down, I could look right up through the chimney flue in the old ceiling. And what they'd done is inserted gallows brackets, which I'm going to represent with these brackets. Now, I'm not a big fan of gallows brackets like this, because you've literally got tons and tons of weight bearing down on that section that was removed. And the established wisdom these days, I'm pretty sure, is if you remove a chimney at ground level, you need to put some sort of a steel beam in to support it. But things were about to get a whole lot worse, because when I was renovating the kitchen, I decided to take out this chimney breast in the TV room to make way for my media bookcase. Video coming up on that soon. And I did that because at the time, not really thinking about this flue here, I was aware that this chimney had been removed. No problems, I thought. But my builders pointed out to me that was a really, really brave thing to do, because now I had an entire chimney resting or cantilevered on these hangers, and the whole thing was resting on two courses of bricks. Not only that, it was a chunky old chimney spanning the entire width of the room above. So I've had some pretty sleepless nights about this. There is a bit of cracking in the room above, and it was for this reason I decided to remove the chimney. Should also point out how my structural engineer around, he had a look at the loft to make sure that the chimney wasn't supporting any of the roof structure. You may need planning permission to remove a chimney above roof level and below roof level. You may also need building regs consent to remove your chimney in the house. So the first step was to get the scaffolding up. I had crazy ideas about how I could save money by using my tower and rigging up some sort of gantry across the roof ridge. But I'm glad I spent the 550 quid on a proper scaffold. The guys installed this at the same time as a scaffold for my lime rendering. Check out the link on screen now. But I'm so pleased I paid for a professional scaffold to be installed, as I've now got a safe, secure platform from which to start one of my biggest single-handed challenges. And there was one particular problem worrying me. I don't have a major plan for this. The only plan I have is to go carefully, because if one brick falls down the inside of the chimney, it'll smash through the kitchen ceiling. Around about here. And the weather wasn't on my side either. Oh no. So without a proper plan, I decided to proceed very carefully, chipping away at the cement haunching and the crown brickwork beneath. And with all these jobs, you immediately start refining what you're doing. Do you know what? I started with this 18 volt. It wasn't touching it, and look at that, it's a decent bit of kit. So when it comes to SDSs, for chiseling work, you really need a 240 volt. Plugged into this EcoFlow power bank that I was gifted a few years ago. So I started gently dismantling the brickwork. That was the first success. And I was getting perilously close to dropping stuff down the chimney, so I came up with the idea of stuffing some perimeter floor insulation wrapped in a bag down the flue so I could stop worrying about the kitchen ceiling below. A little bit more chiselling and the second chimney pot was off. Well, that was a massive win. Barbecue cover fits exactly over the chimney, which is just as well in this intermittent rain we're getting at the moment. Sorry, barbecue. But I had my next problem. I was quickly generating a large pile of bricks up on the scaffold, so I needed a way of getting them down quickly, as this was starting to be more of a problem than demolishing the actual chimney. The hardest bit about this job is ferrying the bricks down the ladder. The easiest bit is the demolition. It literally takes me about 30 seconds to demolish a course of bricks, because a lot of them just sort of lift off. But then I've got to
get them in the wheelbarrow.
So I got an old plant bucket and bought 30 metres of 8mm diameter rope on Amazon. 12mm would have been better, but I just about made it work with some decent gloves. I lowered the bucket into my wheelbarrow and tipped it up by pulling the third rope attached to the underside of the bucket. It worked brilliantly, but took a little practice. That's more like it. Which massively sped up getting the bricks down from the roof, but I still had to ferry them up the drive to the skip. This is the really back-breaking part of this job. And what I really need for a job like this is a motorised wheelbarrow. And perhaps I should have hired a rubbish chute, but then all the bricks would have crashed down into the wheelbarrow below, and I still had the issue of getting that up the garden to the skip. Another big push and I was down to the top floor scaffold ground level with a new problem.
I'm at a bit of a crossroads with this because I want to go down and get the rest of this chimney out and start retiling the roof. Looks like it's going to be a bit of rain at lunchtime, so I'm going to have to get a tarpaulin to protect it somehow. And this is in the way and it's loose. So I think I'm going to have to start dismantling this parapet wall as well, which I didn't want to do until this was done. Just take this off. So that leaves us.
But after giving it a bit of thought, I decided to leave the parapet wall in position for the time being and continue removing the stack, which was a bit fiddly being immediately underneath the scaffold roof.
Came up here this morning, quite a positive mood, thinking I've just got to remove that and then start tiling it. I'm strangely demoralised now because I've obviously got to get down below here to sort of have nothing sticking out to then tile over. And it's a double width chimney, it's a double flue chimney. I've got so many bricks still to remove.
And here's a small pile of the better bricks I had set aside, with the majority more than half filling up this skip, to give you some idea of how many bricks this chimney has already generated. And what's more, with rain scheduled for the next day, I had just one afternoon to get the remainder of the stack demolished and enough tiles in to make it watertight. But what can you do when you've started a job like this? You just have to keep pushing. And if you ever wondered how the lead flashing and the lead soakers below it work on a chimney, here's mine almost completely taken apart.
Right, that is as much of the chimney as I'm taking out at the moment because it's going to rain soon. So I'm up against it, but I want to show you something. 2 flues in this chimney. That one is full of stuff. I don't know what happens to that at kitchen level. It's probably been blocked up by something. This was the one I was worried about and which I used to look up from the kitchen when we were doing our works. So I'm going to block that up for now so that nothing, rodents, flies, anything can fall down it until we remove the entire flue. I've put 4 screws in the wall and the plan is, assume I don't drop my phone down here, that's worked rather well. We have a saying in our Discord group, if in doubt, foam it. It's not pretty,
But I think it'll do the job.
well, I'm a bit less worried about the weather now because I've put a tarpaulin on the scaffold above. So I can now start to dismantle the tiles and the soakers, which gives me some ideas for the porch I'm going to be building. This would be a lovely template because I've never done one of these before. These lead soakers, a bit like the ones I do, I prefer mine because they've got a lip on to stop them sliding down. But all the roofers out there will probably tell me that's not important. Got a massive wasp nest in here.
I had to strip the tiles right down to the wall top plate for a couple of reasons.
Oh, silly me, what was I thinking? Assuming that everything would be hunky-dory and I could just get the tiling done. Firstly, I need a new rafter in there.
To support the battens where the chimney had been,
And secondly, I've got a rotten rafter.
this lead flashing had been leaking.
So I'm going to have to sister a new rafter into it. I can't have a new rafter here supported by the chimney because I might want to take the rest of the chimney out. So I'm going to have to cut these battens off and put a new rafter from the top down to...
I think wall plate is the word you're looking for, Charlie.
And if you're doing a job like this, get yourself a tin of this. There's lots of other companies that do similar stuff. Didn't use it on this particular rafter, should have done, but I did use it on the other side of the roof, as you'll see in a minute. And at least cutting the battens to the centre of each rafter was infinitely easier than it could have been, because I used these cut all discs from TOOLKIT on my grinder. These are tannalised but not C16 or 24 graded. I didn't have the luxury of time to get to my local timber merchants, so I picked them up from the farm DIY store down the road, and using my brilliant Hikoki framing nailer here, more on that in a minute. And I made a bizarre discovery. I found a third flue which must predate the chimney stack I'm removing, as this wasn't linked in with the other two stacks. But anyway, with the rafters in, I could cut down some gravel boards to 35mm wide battens to match the existing. Again, no time to get to the roofing company for proper ones, bought these down the road, and I could get down to one of my favourite DIY jobs, roof tiling. Have I ever bored you with how much I love my Hikoki framing nail gun? Well, sorry if I have, because I just love it. But a day later I did have to make a trip to the roofing company to buy some tile and a halves, which, as the name suggests, are 1.5 times the width of a normal tile. And the reason we need these is because where the chimney was, for some reason I haven't linked in the tiles, lined them up properly, so we've got some big gaps where they should all just seamlessly go together like they do below the old chimney. And the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice a tiling mistake I made here, which I only noticed during this edit. No tile overlap beneath this joint. It could potentially leak, but I have now corrected it. Nails every other course. And we're sort of making good progress now. And suddenly we were done, and it was on to the other side of the roof. Played lots of ideas around in my mind about what to do with this, what's it called, parapet wall or something? And the reality is I've just got to get rid of it, because otherwise there's too many potential leak points over the winter. So that is the current job. But what I've learned on this job is disaster is never far away, as I found here is a brick plummeted down into the lead valley below. Luckily, no damage was caused to the lead. Right, I don't want to worry you if you've got one of these parapet walls. I had a pad in London, a little terrace house, and we had these and the rain was leaking through. So in the end I got a roofer to come in and put a sort of ridge tile over it. But what I'm amazed by is just how fragile. I think because it's had so much weather on it over the years, the mortar is almost non-existent now. So if I literally give it a little touch with the SDS, you'll see what happens. But yeah, just sort of show you that. It's a bit of a pain because it's really hard to keep all the completely fractured sand and cement from cascading down the roof, but that's where we're at. Time to crack on. And it's the same back-breaking process as it was with the chimney, removing the bricks until they were below the line of the roof battens. To the right of the parapet wall you've got the lead soakers I installed in 2010. On the left there are none at all, entirely relying on the render itself. And I was regularly interrupted by the rain. And then, you've guessed it, I had another problem. Oh, Tuesday morning. Mornings like this, you don't really want to have to put up with. Tiled this side pretty much okay last week. And then I've looked down on it today, and for the first time I've realised that the two roofs don't completely meet up properly. So I'm going to have a bit of an S-bend on the roof, ridge stones, whatever they're called. And I've realised since finishing the roof I could have almost completely eliminated that dink by replacing the battens across two rather than one rafter gap and placing a shim in the gap beneath. Hasn't affected the weatherproofing properties of the roof, but it would have looked better. Never mind. So it was full steam ahead, cutting new battens into the space left by the excavated parapet wall and continuing to remove what was left of the wall when I could go no further with the battens. And of course it kept raining. And where there were never any lead soakers on the other side of the wall, we had some damage from water penetration. Bit of frantic remediation work here. Got a rotten timber. This is a problem you've got with, there's no lead flashing on this side of the roof. Oh, sorry, no lead soakers and no lead flashing. So, yeah, water's got in. This is the side that I redid, and you can see there's no rotting. So, important to have your lead soakers. Anyway, what I'm going to do now was to whack on some more of that Ronseal wet rot wood hardener. Sinking in nicely anyway. Just a bit of peace of mind to know I've done as much as I can at the moment to solve the problem. I've been worrying about the lead valley, but came up with a cunning plan. Right, I don't know whether this was the right thing to do or not, but I've decided to keep this wall here so I'm not having to seal it at ground level, which is going to be a bit tricky because I've got to somehow find a way of waterproofing up the sides. So I bought this bit of lead, and the plan is to overlap it, bash it down, and then tuck it under these tiles. Let's see if that works. I've put 2 new aprons over here, and I've used old lead, which doesn't have a particularly neat edge on it, if you see here. I thought of sealing the aprons to the new piece with silicone sealant, but didn't in the end, and I think it should be fine. I'm not entirely sure I've got the detailing right on the lead soakers immediately under the new piece of lead on the roof, but it should be watertight on the same basis that tiles are when you overlap them. Let me know your thoughts. But ultimately I think this is a much better solution than if I'd taken out the parapet wall right down to the lead valley itself. I guess only time will tell. Finally got some decent weather. It's been raining for about a week now. So I'm going to show you very quickly what I've been up to. Right, that is the old chimney, well, the parapet wall for the chimney, which I've basically patched up, and we need to tile that. This is what I did in 2010 when I had to put some new lead soakers in to that wall. And what I had to do was patch really sort of crudely into these 200-year-old tiles here. Weirdly, there's like a patch just here of 200-year-old tiles. For whatever reason, when the people who owned this house before me back in the 70s did it up, they retiled most of it but left this patch here. So the plan is today, well, not so much today because it's already 4 o'clock in the afternoon and I've got to go to the pub in a couple of hours, but the plan is to slowly work across, taking out, as I've done down here, these 200-year-old tiles and redoing up to a point where, I mean, these are still pretty old, but they're in good nick, and just cutting the final tile so that we can really nicely patch in. The roof tiles, ridge tiles up there, the angled ridge tiles, they're going to have to come off because you can't pull up the last tile to get the next one in. So I'm probably going to have to take off most, if not all, of these ridge tiles and rebed them in, which won't be a bad thing anyway, because looking over, half of them have lost their cement, it's crumbling, it's leaking anyway. So that's what I'm doing. But it's a really messy, unpleasant job, and I'll show you why. These are the ones I did in the rain yesterday. As soon as you start pulling out tiles, this happens. Every single tile, for some reason, has been bedded in with mortar. And of course, that mortar has now completely crumbled away. So yeah, it's a massive pain. What I've been trying to do, look at that, is catch it to the extent that I can with a dustpan and brush, just so I'm not constantly sweeping up below. Look at that. So yeah, nasty job, but it'll be satisfying when it's done. So we've got a nice new line of tiles going all the way through to here. That's a bit wider than it should be, so I'm going to measure that and I'm going to cut a tile. Put that in there. Beautiful. And so off I went, and I've got to say it's strangely satisfying making good tiles like this, and I have plans for the old tiles I've taken out. This bit here looks like a complete dog's dinner, but it's actually working quite well. So I've got a tile there, which maybe I have to sort of mix old and new to see what curves it sort of blends in the best. That's all right. And then what happens generally because I had a mismatch down here. So what I'm doing, that's a nice overlap. But you see this isn't, so I'm going to make a larger tile there to correspond with the middle of that tile, and then we can go all the way across without having to do another cut. There it goes. Right in the middle of the tile.
And I was on a roll with the end in sight. Yes, there's a bit of a lump where the roof dinks from either side of that parapet wall, but it's totally weatherproof, and I've put some lead and mortar under the biggest gaps to keep flies and bats out. I was nearly done. As predicted, pretty much all the angled ridge tiles had to come off, and I made full use of the big softy ladder cushion I was gifted by the inventor a few years back. Not only brilliant at stopping tiles cracking under the ladder, but also a great ledge for the mortar bucket. 3 parts sharp sand to 1 part cement, with waterproofing admix added for good measure. I recycled some of those lead soakers to place under each mortar bed to stop the mortar falling into the roof space, as the gaps between the ridge tiles was quite large. And I primed the roof tiles and the underside of the ridge tile with a watered down SPR mix for good measure. Not my prettiest bit of pointing, but I had my work cut out rebedding all those tiles before the end of the day, so I slightly took my eye off the ball on that side of things. And suddenly a job which at times had seemed quite fearsome in its size and the problems that it threw at me, which I had struggled to see an end to, was finally complete.
And I've come up in the roof space partly to check out how the chimney and the parapet wall are looking from below, but also to check for leaks, because you might be able to hear it's raining quite heavily right now. And I'm glad to say that there are, as I can see right now, no signs of water getting in. That is the wet rot hardener, not a leak. And of course the problem with my roof space is there is no roof underfelt. Great for ventilation, I can feel the wind blowing in now, but not so good for insects and rain, although when a tile does get compromised you find out pretty quickly it's leaking. So yeah, all good, pleased with that.
So that's it, it's all finished. Scaffolding got removed yesterday, which is a bit strange seeing this place without it. I miss it in a way, it's been such a fantastic structure. And we had a storm last night, so I'm really glad we got all of this weatherproofed. Yes, there is still quite a lot of chimney breast to remove in this bathroom and in the loft space above, but I feel much happier now having removed several tons of weight off the roof. So I think those gallows brackets will be more than able to support what's left, and we will be removing all of this when I come to renovate this bathroom. Looking at the finished result, I am a bit gutted that I didn't stretch a couple of battens across the rafters to get rid of that dink. But with a combination of some lead and sand and cement, I've filled the larger gaps totally weatherproofed, as it was anyway. And the smaller gaps, I've put some reticulated foam in to stop bugs, insects, bats, that sort of thing getting in. So I think we're all good there. Looking at the angled ridge tiles, it's not the neatest sand and cementing I've ever done, but I was very much running out of energy the day that I finished that. I should have come back up here and given it a bit of a sponge, but at the end of the day I'm the only one who's ever going to see this up here. So bottom line, it's incredibly weather tight, and that's all I'm that bothered about. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Try and be kind. And if you're new to my channel, it would mean so much to me to have you subscribe. You can do that by clicking on the link here, and don't forget to click the bell notification icon so you get notified of all my future uploads. Thanks again so much for watching. Hopefully see you same time next weekend.